Let's call the Special Ways and Means Committee meeting to order. The agenda tonight is preliminary levy discussion. So, suppose Corky or Audrey?
Yep, I can start out. There are a couple of preliminary items. You're all wondering about the audit status. Based upon the work that Audrey and I have done in our consultations with our auditor, we will meet the September 29th deadline. We still have significant work to do, but we will meet that deadline.
Meaning that there is no concern about losing LGA?
If we meet the deadline, there should be no concern about losing LGA.
Okay.
Nice job, Audrey, Corky, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all your work on that, Audrey.
Second, for those of you who inquired of me about the municipal finance plan, I've got two things to report to you. First of all, the municipal finance plan typically consists of a number of items, one of which is an analysis of our roadways, sewer, water, wastewater, and streetlights. That is presently being undertaken, and we have a request for proposals out. The proposals should come in on October 12th. We'll make a decision then. But the deadline which we have established with all of the potential proposers is that will be completed by July 1st of 2024. And that then can become a component of our municipal finance plan. And at that time, we will be looking at such items as what they tell us about our streets, water, and sewer. We'll also be looking at the swimming pool, and we'll also be looking at what, if anything, we would do with Washington. So they will all become components of that plan, which you all will be establishing in 2024. I spoke with our bond counsel, Ellers, Todd Hagan, about this, and he concurred and said, you wouldn't budget for that this year because your plan won't be established till next year. The second tier of that is, how do we pay for that? Consultation with Ellers, if any, and we would have budget reserves to do that. He thought that it would be reasonable to anticipate $20,000 to $30,000, but he said you wouldn't budget for that because you don't know yet till you get the plan.
So question about that.
Yes.
So we have a figure in our budget, in your budget, for $50,000 for the search, right?
That's for the city administrator.
For the city administrator position.
Yes.
So we don't really know how much that's gonna cost, so we just plug a number in. Why can't we plug a number in to our budget that is like $25,000 for the consultation with Ellers, as a placeholder?
When I spoke to Todd about that, I said, can't we just do that? He said, most places don't really do that. They just pay for it out of their reserves, but we sure can, if that's something you want as a placeholder. We know it's gonna be there.
I mean, if it's a budget item that we plan on paying for, I don't see why you wouldn't put it in the budget.
I'm just telling you what he told me, so we can put a number in, completely arbitrary. We'll put a number in as a budget holder. That's
Okay,
fine.
thank you, thank you.
And I spoke with him on Friday about that.
So when is the start of the fiscal year?
We're January 1.
Okay, so if this all plans to get done by July 1st, in theory, then wouldn't we start that municipal finance plan in July, August?
Yes.
Okay, so why wouldn't that be budget for this year?
We don't know what it's gonna cost. It's
Well,
a
we don't know
bonding
what's gonna
thing.
be- What's gonna cost for our search either, but we still put a number in there.
Okay,
Right.
we can put a number in there. It'll just raise up the levy amount. That's fine.
I mean.
But
this
we'll
should
just
be
guess.
An accurate number, is that not?
I mean, we
Why
can.
does that seem so crazy? You're saying like, we can just guess if we're guessing at other numbers too.
Well, we're not guessing at the administration search. We know what the last one was.
Yeah.
$28,000.
Right, and we put 50 in.
Right.
We're guessing. So wouldn't
It's
that make sense?
It's an estimate, yes. We can put that in. We don't know what the municipal finance plan will cost us.
Right, but we do know an estimate.
for the payment to Ellers,
Correct.
we can do that. That's fine.
Okay,
It just, I was talking with
sense.
Todd, and he said, we don't typically do that, but we can sure do it.
yeah, I think that would
The-
make
The only
sense.
thing that I brought this up several times, and I cannot wait where we can get on a discussion to figure out what the money is in our reserves. So we can have an intelligent discussion on that, because we sit here throughout the year and say, we're gonna take this out of reserve, we're gonna take the water tower out of reserve. Everybody makes assumptions that we're gonna take out of reserves, but us as council members never know what's in reserves to say, hey, we need to pump the brakes on taking out of reserves. So, since I've been on the council, well, not right at the beginning, it took me a while to get my feet wet, but since I started asking what that unrestricted reserves is, I haven't got a number. And then my hopes is once we finally do get a number, all of us can agree and say, this is what we want our unrestricted reserve number to be. So we can begin to protect our reserves in a way, say, okay, last year we had a tough year. Now our reserve went from this to this. Well, last year we didn't spend the money that we thought we were gonna do, so we're gonna stick that into reserve, so now we need to have a number
Yeah.
of what we need to maintain, but
I agree with you, Delane. I think the other part of that too is when we don't have that accurate number, when we're talking about this levy discussion, you know, if we had more than we needed last year, like we're making kind of a blind assumption again, that like we need this amount. I hope that once we are able to get this municipal finance plan, that it also gives us, Ellers can give us some more direction on what really should be reserved and what that percentage looks like. Because it just seems like even with League of Minnesota Cities, that number can vary so greatly. And I'd like to have a more educated understanding of like, does it need to be 40%? Does it need to be 60? Will that affect our LGA eventually? I mean, I think those are absolutely
Yeah, it
good
doesn't.
questions for us to be asking.
yeah. So I mean, the thing is that this year we're looking at a high levy number, right? So my hope is at some point in time, we say, okay, we didn't spend the money last year that we said we're gonna do, so that number, that excess should go into this year's
That should be something
discussion.
we consider when we make that levy, right? That could maybe possibly knock down those points.
Right, but it's just been, you know, difficult to get that. I mean, then I learned over the years, there's revenue, but then there's restricted and unrestricted, and I'm like, well, it's gotta figure out what we can get that, and it doesn't seem like it's gonna happen this year yet, so to figure out what the,
I like that to be our goal for next year.
Well, it will happen
but
this
not
year.
before we discuss where we want our levy to be. So I mean,
Correct.
I was hoping to have that number, so we say, okay, we underspent $350,000 from last year. I'd like that $350,000 to go into this year, then levy less, is what I'm getting
Right.
at, but we're not gonna be at that point, are we?
We could be, yes, because what you're doing tonight is setting a
top end.
preliminary levy.
Yep.
The final levy has to be done before December 28th. So in the meantime, we will get our audit,
Yep.
and that will tell us what those numbers are.
Okay.
We have 3 months between essentially when we need to certify the preliminary levy and when we need to certify the final levy.
So basically what tonight would be just is whatever the top end that we can't go over, but that doesn't mean that it can't shrink between now and December.
Right, so-
And I think that's where we need to come back and have that conversation then.
So we can increase, but we can't decrease? or we
No,
can
No,
other way.
decrease it,
We
or
can
can't
decrease, we can't increase over whatever we decide on this evening.
Okay.
Well,
So the
not this evening, Monday night.
Monday.
This is
But
a
I mean,
discussion.
this
Yes.
is a discussion about what that would be for
Okay.
Monday.
So the other thing I'd like to know is, I mean, I know it probably gets into the realm of micromanaging, but if we set the levy to whatever we set it at tonight, whatever that is, and then you guys have to go back to the drawing board to get your departments to get to that levy first, I think, in some ways, I think it's, I'd like to know what the departments are decided to cut to get to that number, because maybe we don't agree. So is that, tell me, is that get into the realm of us,
I don't think we can really, tell department heads
Why?
what to cut out
Well, I
of
don't
their
think we should
budget.
be line item. I think that's their professional opinion would be
but
what is it we need
what if,
versus.
for example, they decide, say, hey, we're cutting all IT stuff and to get down to this budget? Well, I don't agree with that. I mean, would you?
Yeah, no, I think that if it's something that I would find to be crucial, it would be nice to know, is it something that they're having to do because it's the only way they can get down to that number? I mean,
Oh, yeah,
I get
yeah,
it in that sense of the word.
Maybe it doesn't need to be, but I'd sure like to know if it's something that we're throughout the year been trying to get, and then all of a sudden, through these back and forths that we're doing, that, well, we had to cut that to get under this number, well.
Right.
you
I
know,
think if, let's say you want department heads to cut their budget, I think, it's up to them to decide what they think their wants and needs are. It ain't up to us to tell them what to cut.
I think, I agree with you, but I think what Delaine's saying is he also doesn't want it to be to the detriment of the city, that what they're cutting. So if it's something like the payroll system, right, that obviously is gonna mean a lot to making things smoother, is that something that we decide as a council is like, maybe we just need to have another point percentage increase? We really need that to be, or feel that that should be in the budget this
Well,
year.
I
And I
think we
get that part, and I think it's just more of us just knowing
I
what's
mean,
been cut.
we go through all this work for the department heads telling us what they want, and we're agreeing. So why can't it, when they come to cutting stuff? why-
We have a better idea what that is.
Right.
Well, I
if
think
they
we
know
should
that
enter
you can
into the
add- then we'll
conversation
add
because
points.
this is all shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah, I mean,
We
they're
we
not
need
gonna cut their
to,
own
we need
legs
to
off.
hear what the pitch is for the proposed levy before we start making assumptions about what should be cut.
Well, I would just like to say that you have really, really good department heads. They're going to make decisions that are in the best interest of this city. They are not going to be draconian.
Right.
They are not making cuts that will injure the city's long-term ability.
Yeah.
You
And
gotta-
I think that's where they make that's their professional opinion, right, to make those decisions.
That's why you hire them.
That's why we pay them.
You gotta remember too, though, is when department heads came with their budget, it was all their wants
So,
and needs.
And I get that we have great department heads, but when I look back the last 15 years, what has happened over those period of years that maybe we should have cut to get us in this, in the situations we're probably at today in some of these areas,
Especially with the wear and tear.
For example, we're still doing time cards on paper. So that had to be cut. Somebody had to have brought that up, and then that had to have been cut at some point in time, and maybe if I'd have known that, not me, but maybe if a council member would have known that, okay, we can't upgrade our system to not do time cards on paper, then maybe we'd have fought a little higher to get our levy up, say, okay, yeah, we need to get that done, we need to keep our levy up higher.
So could it be something where we set what we expect for the levy, they go back and before the deadline of next week, they can tell us what it would be cut, and if we're like, no, that's something we want, like we not want but need, then we can go back and rediscuss.
That's a pretty tight timeline.
Okay.
I think that's almost impossible to meet.
Okay.
My only concern is I felt, the one budget that I felt was pretty needs and not wants seemed to be the Public Works Department. And so my concern is us making these cuts across the board for departments. It seems like there's a lot of things that just have been probably put to the wayside for too long. And that I want to make sure that the things that need to get done under that budget get done under that budget. I think that for what it's worth, I might think most departments did have more, but I think Brandon came up and said it, that a lot of his stuff, it was needs, it wasn't wants.
Right.
So I do want to make sure that we're not kicking that can metaphorically down the road again by then us having to have him cut something that now, that grader that could have lasted us 10 years is now lasting us 5 because we didn't do the appropriate maintenance, right?
But, I mean, when it comes to, that being the case, then, to be honest, whatever the budget is at the end of this whole process, whatever that number is, that's what we should start at instead of, so what would the percent be I mean, I'm probably getting ahead, but based on the budget request now from all departments, whatever
What
that
would the
number is,
percentage increase be if we granted everything?
everything.
65.09 levy increase.
So, okay, so then, that being said, then we know we're gonna go down and we can't go up, so then we should just set the levy to be that, knowing that we're gonna go down, but I mean, we don't know what the cuts are gonna be until, you know,
Yeah,
later, I mean,
that's pretty
that's
significant.
crazy, that's a crazy number,
But
I
that,
mean,
Yeah.
I mean, what Councilman Clot is saying, in an ideal world, absolutely. Absolutely do that, because you know it's going to be reduced, but it gives the departments and you all as much flexibility as you possibly could. And understand, for Councilwoman Jurdy's concern, there is a dialogue between the departments. We are not the Graham-Rudman 10% across the board.
Right.
We talk amongst the department heads. They are intelligent people who, to your point, Delaney, they are different than who we've had in the past. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
They are thoughtful. They get it, that there needs to be a dialogue about, maybe I have to give up X so that Y can get, they get it. But yeah, I mean, we could make this real simple, and Audrey and I would love it, and so would our department heads. 65.09, knowing we're coming down. We're done.
but the thing is,
And I can even tell you what that would be in
we gotta
terms of a
cut-
tax
when we
increase.
gotta cut X, I just wanna know what X might be. I mean, I'm not saying that I would agree or disagree, but I'd certainly like to have a discussion on what X is.
Well, you know, if you look at the projection of a 25% levy, there still is a $1.195 million reduction that needs to happen. So I don't know. I don't know that a 65.09% levy increase wouldn't be a bad idea, because it would give us as long as we made it clear to the community and the folks that are listening that this is a strategy that enables us to have the conversation about those wants and needs.
And I might just indicate roughly the tax consequences, because you all know, and you've heard me say it, the levy increase is not the percent tax increase. I can tell you, at 25% levy increase on a $100,000 home, it's a first of all, it's a 6.89 tax increase. On a $100,000 home, that is $4.08 a month. On a $250,000 home, it's $13.50 a month. That's at 25%. So extrapolate, let's go up to 75%. You're talking $12 on a $100,000 home. You're talking $22 on a $150,000 home, $31 on a month. This is a month now.
Yep.
On a $200,000 home, and $40.50 a month on a $250,000.
That's 75.
Yeah,
And even with the budget set at what it's at right now, we're not even that high, that's 60.
correct. That's just rough extrapolation. And that's something that you all know and we know here. We need to balance city needs
Yep.
with consequences
Yep.
on taxpayers.
Yep.
So if you are comfortable saying 65.09, we get that. It's not going to stay there.
No.
But it gives you the maximum flexibility, department heads, maximum flexibility. And we don't have to come back with final numbers till we have to have them out for the
So
truth in taxation on December 11th.
The thing is once, if we do decide to do the 65, I hope it gets reported just exactly like you said, on a $200,000. It would be $30 a month, or something, I hope, because 65% sounds incredible.
Yes.
But when you break it down just like you did, it doesn't sound that incredible.
And rest assured that when I am approached by the media, I will explain it just that way.
Right.
I will
So-
say, sorry, Tim, we've had a lot of issues in the past with how this has been conveyed out, and I think that's probably one of our biggest concerns going forward. So I think we can't overstate that enough as to what exactly is happening here. Because, even the percentages, they just automatically assume that's what it's going up on their taxes, and then you get this muddled in with the county taxes, and it gets to be a mess.
It will
And
be
so
articulated.
the clearer we can be about this, the better. I think just another point for those who are new to council as well, I think one of the biggest struggles departments had in the past is that instead of actually looking in the wants and the needs and what those percentages looked like, the council arbitrarily, I would say, from my perception at times, just said, it's 5% and we're not going up. You figure out how
I mean,
what you
was-
cut,
yes,
right?
it was crazy.
And it was just insane. They're like, I just feel more comfortable with 8. They would pull something out of the air and it wouldn't necessarily align with what was actually needed by the departments, which is, I think, where we've kind of gotten into this space. And so I think just to be clear and conscious of that's how it's been in the past and why cuts and why I think Delane and I are so, gun shy about this is because we were so concerned that so many things were neglected because they just didn't have the funds to go forward and do what they needed to do.
Well, I think that we're doing things in a different way.
And we are, but
And
the
think
historical
that
context is
this would
helpful.
This would be a very bold strategy moving forward, to have the broadest conversation and have the greatest sort of glance at what these wants and needs are, and give us an opportunity to really drill down and make sure that we have the essential ingredients to a successful future.
Yeah.
And yes, it does give you the most flexibility, gives department heads flexibility, and we do have this 3-month period where we can report to you, these are our conversations, these are, at 50% now, these are the items that appear to be eliminated. Again, I do think there is a bit of line item veto in what you've said, Delane, but if we come back and report, you can see, these are the expenditure reductions we're anticipating or talking about, first tier, second tier, and then ultimately you decide where it goes. But we have to have that done before the Truth and Taxation hearing, which is set for December 11th.
We've got plenty of time.
So I don't want to steal all the thunder for the rest of the meeting, but there's a percentage out there, the break even one. I don't know if you want to say that.
12.09.
Oh, so 12.09.
If at 12.90.
12.90.
12.90, if you set the levy increase at 12.90, no tax increase, but we would be required to reduce expenditures by 1.94 million. That's the one.
And this is a break even that we've come up also without having what the final numbers are in the audit to actually see what was not spent this last year. Correct?
Yeah, well, this would be the number that would generate the revenue, and based on the wants, this what would be needed to be reduced. We don't know if we have reserve from last year or
So
not.
at this,
That could break that down further. Okay.
at this
Yes.
point right now,
I just want that to be clear.
do we even have a guess if our unrestricted reserves grew from last year?
At this point, I don't want to say specifically, because I don't want to mislead anybody with a number that I would provide.
Okay, so the other thing that's possible is I'm gonna propose if we have an increase over our unrestricted reserves from last year, I'm gonna propose that whatever that increase was goes into the fund for 2024
To knock
Yeah.
down the percentages.
to knock down the
The
percentage.
unspent reserves.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what we did, if you recall, the people on the council last year.
Yep.
There were reserves where we bought down
Yep.
the levy increase.
Yep.
We took reserves that we knew we had, and as an example, we maybe purchased a one-time capital asset.
Right, I just don't want to get into that as a yearly practice because
Right,
it,
agreed.
just to say we're gonna pull reserves just to get the number down, I mean, we have to keep our reserves, we have to have an eye on our reserves as well.
No, and that's for you all to decide, but it is possible.
The other
Yes.
thing is when we talked about, I guess department heads, automatically thinking in their mind that, well, I have to do this project, so we're gonna take that. I don't think that should be a part of their strategy to use I'll give you an example, the water tower. In my mind, that should be on the CIP plan, because we know we're gonna paint that water tower every so many years. But the response was, well, we're just gonna take that out of reserves. Well, I don't think that's how that should go.
No,
But didn't in the past, didn't we put, reserves to recondition the water towers or whatever in restricted reserves? Didn't we budget a few dollars?
Sounds like that.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I can't answer.
But
Isn't that what that $900,000 account in the water department is all about?
You might be talking that 9 million.
Or 9 million, thank you.
But, okay.
But part of it is the asset itself.
It's
Yes.
all of the asset.
But there's some change there left after the asset.
But
So
we're not-
that's another question I had too,
Yes.
Corky, is, so the city owns assets. What's the total value of our assets? And what does it look like with our schedule of depreciation of those assets?
And that-
I've not seen anything that describes that.
Well, you're gonna see that in the audit.
Okay. Fingers
Yes.
crossed.
and then can I ask really quick, just going through this, and I know but the 5-year capital improvement plan, it doesn't have anything on here for like public works? Unless I'm missing a page?
I don't think you should be missing a page, but the capital improvement plan is this
Public
sheet.
Works and Central Garage.
Yep,
Am I missing a page then?
you do not have Public Works in Central Garage. You do not have,
I've
that's what
got
it
it
is.
here.
Yeah. Public Works.
Public Works in Central Garage.
VTP, Library, Parks and Rec.
Okay,
they're all
I'm
on that
missing a page then. All right.
This one right here. Got the same number, I wanna make sure they got the same number, yep, 413.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it would have been,
there.
yeah. I printed out this whole thing, I don't know. Okay, thank you,
Anyway, there it is.
thank you.
So, I mean, if you're sincere in your desire to give the department heads and your city administrator and finance director ultimate flexibility, and set the 65.09, and I will describe it just that way when I'm asked about, here's what it means in terms of a monthly tax increase for each of those values. I got no problem with that. The media is here, and as you know, I'm typically interviewed afterwards, and you couldn't be much clearer, and I don't think I could be much clearer.
like Tim said, it's bold, which I think, listen, in my time here on the council, we are totally moving the city in the right direction. I feel that every time I come to a meeting.
Yep.
So I mean, I think if the citizens know our goal is to get it down, we just need some latitude on how to get there instead of just, like, Christie said earlier, we've always been in a habit just to throw it into a number out of the air, pull a number out of the air, just to say it feels good to us and we feel like we've done our job as we walk out this door tonight. But I don't know, I'd be in favor of starting it there and letting you guys go to work.
And I explicitly understand that your direction is to consider reductions. I think, I can't speak for you, Audrey, but it's pretty clear.
Yes, it
And department heads, we have a meeting tomorrow morning, and I will strap them all in their chairs, because if I tell them this, they'll fall out of them. But they'll be willing to do it.
Well, I'd like to hear from my other colleagues, what they think about this idea.
I mean, I like the idea. I mean, yeah, give them time to come up with, yeah, like you said, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, what we need, could get by without, and what is a want. Like, I think they'd be willing to give us, hey,
And the
this is a
tax
want.
impact will be an essential component. We
Yeah.
want to translate that levy increase. Here's how it would impact you at certain levels.
So during this course then, when they go back to work, is it possible for each of them to come back in then and maybe explain, or is that just too time consuming to say, okay, I started out here and now I'm here and this is how I got there, and it doesn't, it could just be I don't know, does that sound
Is
crazy or?
it time consuming? Absolutely. You'll be having special meetings, probably weekly,
Till the end of the year?
till the end of the year. Might I suggest that what we do is we can bring a summary, like at a Ways and Means at the end of each council meeting. If you have specific questions, whether we bring it as a couple of departments, we can bring a summary, or we could lump it all together and say, this is what all the departments have come to, and now we're at 41%.
Right.
It's completely up to you, but I think you'd be special meetings.
Yeah.
Well, just really quick, it's the end of December, correct?
December 11th. We have to have it prepared for the Truth and Taxation meeting on December, I believe that's a Monday.
Okay, so approximately, we could technically have 6 Ways and Means meetings, maybe 7 prior to that. I don't know if like every week is a necessity. I think that at Ways and Means for every council meeting could be good enough for us to make decisions and go back and forth.
Bring that summary in to you all.
Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
it requires an every week type situation for us
It
to still make
depends on
a
the
good.
detail you want, of course.
Depends upon.
So what's
the
the-
progress
Sure.
you're gonna make.
What is the date we'll have the number for the,
Audit?
the restricted, unrestricted,
Funds?
Well, when we get the audit done.
so, okay, so,
That sort of gives us our balance sheet. Is that what it
That's
is?
exactly what an
Yeah.
audit is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't tell you when. All I know is from a review of the materials, conversations with our auditors, they will meet the September 29th deadline.
so sometime in October, we should have that number then, right?
Yes.
and then where exactly will the municipal finance plan be as far as department budgets?
Excuse me?
Up to them.
The municipal
hear.
finance plan,
You mean
Line
the
item?
reserving the money for
yeah,
25,000 or
yeah,
just?
the
place
line
over?
item,
Admin?
Yeah, I think on administration.
okay.
Okay.
And then, for capital improvement projects, if the water tower is such a significant cost, why is that not under the capital improvement projects?
So I think, wasn't Brandon looking at taking that out of
the
the
reserve.
water fund, or?
Yeah,
I
said
believe
something.
that's what he
Yeah,
said.
he said that.
But shouldn't that be noted as a,
But why not on a CIP? I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Well, that's the department's desire, you know, you want it on CIP. He said out of the reserve, I guess,
but when he says out of reserve, he's talking restricted reserves,
The water fund.
water fund.
the water fund, so that's a restricted, so that's,
That's-
Well, it can only be used for the water,
okay,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
You can't take water money to park and rec.
Well, you can't take that money and put towards to lowering our levy then, right?
No.
Right.
Okay.
Can't we change that? Don't we have the authority to direct where those kinds of reserves go?
To a point.
But I
If
think-
it's a restricted fund, then no.
But I think,
So, yeah, what are those called again? When they're related to a utility? What is that called again?
Enterprise.
Enterprise.
Enterprise funds. So we don't have authority to to touch enterprise funds.
Aren't they,
To renegotiate.
that would be under restricted funds though.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since I've seen, as far as restricted reserves or funds and what's actually in our reserves like Delane was talking about. But there are two reserves there. One's restricted.
Yeah.
And one's unrestricted.
Exactly.
We can't take anything from our restricted to put towards reducing our levy.
No,
No.
no.
We can take from unrestricted.
Said that already.
Exactly,
that's
buy it, I call
You
it
buy
buy
it
it
down.
down.
So when you say Brandon is taken from reserves to pay for the water tower, that's from
Restricted.
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 Okay,
The
that-
water restricted
got it,
reserves,
thanks.
which is probably to the benefit. And my other question is, is the assessments of all of our buildings completed, the reports done?
What do you mean, the assessment?
The report that we were doing on all the buildings, assessing
A
them?
facilities
Yes.
assessment, yes, it is done.
Okay,
And so is the swimming pool. and
are we
so-
getting those?
Yes, I will get them to you, yes.
Because I also wonder, when we look at this capital 5-year plan, like, I'm assuming that those are not accounted for, whatever the reporting has noted.
What do you mean? I don't understand what
Like,
you're asking.
anything that is noted in the reports as far as like things that need to be approved upon are not currently in the CIP.
They are not, because
Some areas have.
some, but that would be a component of the municipal finance plan as to how you want to pay for those things if you do. As an example, include the swimming pool, whatever your decision is.
Right.
If it's to keep it open,
Right.
here's the cost to do so. That goes into the municipal finance plan, and you all decide, do we want to bond that entire amount? Do we want to bond part of that amount? That's the municipal finance plan that will be constructed after the streets, the wastewater, water analysis is done. And in our request for proposals, we have an addendum that says that will be completed by July 1st, 2024. Then we can commence figuring out what is our municipal finance plan, what items we want in, what's the period, 5 years, 10 years. That's the undertaking, as soon as that's done.
So we'll basically have another Ways and Means discussing that and also what we want to do with Washington School and
Oh,
the
we'll
pool.
have many meetings on that, not this year.
Yeah.
But when we get the whole bundle of
Right.
components.
After we get the assessments
For
from,
the proposal that's gone out for the comprehensive plan for the streets, water, wastewater,
Yep.
sidewalks, streetlights. We have 1,000 streetlights in the
Road
city.
raise, lights.
Yeah, I just don't want to get too far down the road with the municipal finance plan because it's not just about bonding, but getting the bonding ratings in order for us to get funding from state and federal
Exactly.
governments. We have to have that rating. And so I think that the sooner the better, and I think that needs to be, when we talk about priorities, needs to be a priority. Because then we can start to apply for some of those other pieces, which at the end of the day will possibly help us with paying for improvements to the city. So I really feel that needs to be of the utmost importance when we go forward for us to really be able to also take off the financial burden through levies in the future too.
Well, bonding is also a tax.
Yes, but I'm saying that it's not always bonding, right? It's a bond
Right.
rating that we would need to do federal and state grants a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
Oh,
not
for
all
sure.
about asking or trying to get loans. It's about us being able to show that we have a certain rating, and then that allows us to go forward with some of these other grants and things at the federal and state level. So, but also, I mean, the municipal finance plan really is a business plan, right? And that's, at the end
Oh,
of the
for
day, what we
sure.
should have regardless.
So does the business plan then inspire a strategic plan for 5 years?
It is implementation of a predetermined plan to what you're gonna fix and what you're not gonna fix and how you're gonna pay for it.
Okay, so.
That's what a municipal
so
finance plan does.
It actually enumerates the mechanism for achieving those strategic goals.
Yes.
I think the other part of it too is the comprehensive plan, which is important, which is actually really taking into account a lot of the way that the citizens of the city would like to see. And I think that also would help us inform what that strategic plan would look like based on what they, as a city, are interested in doing. There's a lot of focus groups, a lot of things that are asked within the community, and that helps provide us direction as the ones who are elected, right, by our citizens to decide. And it's not more of our anecdotal, what we heard from a guy at the grocery store, but actually an overall comprehensive idea of what this city is looking to do and how we should go forward.
And we have engaged a firm to update our comprehensive plan.
Okay, so where are we?
Well, the last I heard, you were contemplating establishing as a preliminary levy the percentage increase of 65.09, and then having our media informed, here's what it means in terms of the dollars that would be required to carry out what's been asked for, and then computation of how that would increase the tax rate to the citizens at that amount and then lower amounts, and then convert that to $1 monthly amount.
And articulate that it's a strategy for the council to utilize in order to get to our actual final levy figure.
I think council and department heads.
And department heads.
Well, and I think also it provides us the ability to not rush through
Yes.
a smaller amount, not knowing really what that also entails, and gives us more time in the next 3 months to be able to truly understand what those line items that are being cut are. So I believe that gives us the opportunity to have a more educated decision at the end of the day when it comes down to us actually finalizing that levy.
So do we take a vote or what?
Consensus.
It's consensus.
Consensus,
We
okay.
vote at the city council meeting.
And that will be
So
Monday
this is
night.
what we recommend for our council meeting on Monday.
Yep.
Is that the consensus of the members of the Ways and Means Committee to establish the preliminary levy and recommend to the city council 65.09%?
Here, here.
Here,
Yes for me.
yes.
I think yes, based on the conversation we just had, and hopefully that is articulated as well.
Say yes or no.
Just gotta make sure that the public understands what the dollar increase is per month.
Yeah.
And I think what I will do is, as you know, I'll be interviewed after this meeting tonight, and I will contact the radio station and see if I can get on.
Is there a press release we can send out ourselves to get it all in there that we want to get in there or not?
I think also possibly having some type of communication via Facebook or even on our website that like clearly articulates what we're saying here would be.
Well, and I think also when we do that articulation, that it's done, you know, in public speak
Yeah.
and no jargon.
Yeah.
Well, just so you know that we'll have a department head meeting tomorrow, we'll go over this, and I will cross off 2 hours of my day to try to write how this was just explained to you in a fashion and send it out. And you all can take a look at it. You know, immediate response, of course, will be appreciated. I will get a hold of KROX, see if I can be on Valley Talk, maybe even tomorrow or Wednesday or a couple days.
Okay.
Because,
Let's have a
yeah,
blitz. Have a blitz.
I think
I'll be blitzed.
at the end of the, yeah. Hopefully you won't. But I think at the end of the day, such a big part of this is not just making the decision, but also making it understandable and clearly provide that information to our citizens, because I feel at times you get one person who misunderstands it, and then that can run rampant, and at times that is also detrimental to the process.
Yeah.
So I can't overstate how important communication is, and I think that also, you know, lends to what we had talked about with Carrie's budget and having somebody who could possibly do this going forward in the future in a way that really allows people to understand where we're coming from.
Yeah.
And that it's easily articulated and that misinformation isn't what is seen as truth.
I think it's important for our constituents to know that they can contact any of us, hopefully to have a coherent conversation about the strategy that we're employing in order to build a better future for this community.
You also gotta remember, you know, in the past, it was brought up about council sitting at 4%, 3%, 5%. Well, you know, not to defend the council, but I mean, our department heads too are very frugal. We've got younger department heads, they know what their wants and needs are to keep their employees safe. I mean, the previous, public works director, I mean, he was running equipment that were older than the people that were running them, and, I mean, hats off to him, he was frugal, and, you know, there was many times where we asked our IT director, what do you need? What do you need? You know, and it was all good, he didn't have a large budget. And then, hats off to Chad, he came along and, you know, he's, getting us where we need to be, so.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think a lot of us who are in council, transparency is so important. And being able to like share as we go forward, what that looks like and how those conversations happen is a big thing. I think to a point though, Mr. Mayor, as you were mentioning, I think like the lift stations is a perfect example of how we were more worried about percentage than we were about safety, and look where we are now, you know, having to pay for the sins of our fathers, for lack of a better term.
You can be
So I'm
transparent,
hoping-
you can't be transparent, but we better have reduction tomorrow before we start going all over the place. Make sure that we know what we're talking about.
Yep, absolutely.
So, basically,
I
it's,
think as long as it gets out to the public, that they'll have a better understanding, because I know it's next few days.
Well,
it's
yeah.
gonna be something.
This is a starting point, and we know we want the levy a little lower, but, I mean, this gives something for our department heads and Audrey and Corky to work with, and.
yeah, right.
At the end of the day, it gives us time, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Are we done?
All right, consensus is set where it's at. Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.